on community television. You're watching In the Bleachers, the TV show for the world's most passionate sports fans. Hello, everyone, and happy first Monday of October. I'm Jaime Hixson.
And I'm Eric Rosen.
Boy, are we happy that you could join us tonight because, for one, we've got a lot of business to discuss, and two, we have a major announcement. 2 weeks from tonight is our 500th episode.
Man, 500. That's, considering you started this program over a decade ago, right?
March 2006 was our very first episode.
And the fact that it's been going on strong every Monday, and you've been pretty much the constant behind this whole program.
Mm-hmm.
It's really a testament to you.
Yep, thank you. Just to give you an idea, in years past when we did the 200th, the 300th, and the 400th episodes, we would always have a 2-hour show. But this time, we're going to keep it simple, and we're just going to make it for 1 hour.
Oh, so, I thought you were going to be like 4 hours.
I wish. But we're only going to make it an hour. We're just going to keep it simple. No theatrics, nothing spectacular. So next Monday, 2 weeks from tonight, actually, specifically October 17th,
so I can
is our 500th episode.
So I can cancel the cake. I can also cancel the open bar we were going to have. And possibly...
Oh, you could still bring in the cake. We're just going to eat it. And we could still have the open bar. We just got to keep Hector away from it.
Okay.
But still, we're going to be inviting some friends onto the show, and we're going to do a little bit of reminiscing for that hour. So check us out 2 weeks from tonight. That's October 17th. Same time, same channels on Verizon and Time Warner.
I can't wait to be a part of it, man.
I can't wait to have this 500th episode, and I can't wait to have you be a part of it as well. So while we continue on strong, Major League Baseball season officially ended their regular season just yesterday.
Yep, and the New York Mets finally on Saturday clinched the top NL wildcard spot and will be hosting a one-game wildcard playoff match against the San Francisco Giants from Citi Field in Flushing Meadows, Queens. I saw the tickets on StubHub, cheapest standing room only, $102.
No surprise, especially considering who's going to be pitching in that game. It's Noah Syndergaard and Madison Bumgarner, the single best pitching matchup of this wild card round right now.
And they're both going against pretty bad offenses. If you look at the San Francisco Giants in the second half, I'm talking about in the second half, not the entire season, because their stats are better if you put their entire season together. But in the second half, they were ranked 25th or worse in every major statistical category, including runs, home runs, batting average, and OPS. Even with the lineup that they have offensively. The Mets were no better.
Overall, especially with runners in scoring position, the Mets were a complete and utter embarrassment with runners in scoring position for about 3.5 months.
The fact that but in this month alone, if you subtract the other months of this baseball year and you just look at September, they scored 141 runs, fifth best mark in baseball. That's pretty commendable. The last 6 weeks alone, they won 27-12, which put them in the position that they were in to clinch that wild card spot on Saturday. And had they not clinched it Saturday, Syndergaard would have had to have started on Sunday. But because of the fact they won Saturday, they were able to skip Syndergaard and put him in this game for Wednesday against Bumgarner.
Yep. Just to give you an idea how the Mets got this far, because quite frankly, no one, not even their own fans, saw this happening. Exactly why did the Mets make it to Wednesday night? Let's count the ways. Number one, Yoenis Cespedes again had a tremendous season at the plate. It's a testament to the manager, Terry Collins, who did such a magnificent job of just pushing buttons whenever he had to. Specifically, how he was able to plug in a lot of the young players that came out of the farm system in Vegas, and it seemed like every single kid was able to make a contribution. Anywhere from TJ Rivera to
Rene Rivera,
guys like Rene Rivera to Seth Lugo to
Robert Gesellman,
who saw Robert Gesellman make a contribution to that pitching staff. And consider this, Noah Syndergaard and Bartolo Colon were the two best pitchers the Mets had this season.
And
everybody else was on the disabled list. Matt Harvey, Jacob deGrom, Steven Matz are all on the disabled list. Now, even John Neese, who they got in a trade from the Pirates, wound up going on the disabled list as well.
Shocker.
And that's not all. David Wright was on the disabled list. Wilmer Flores is now on the disabled list. And that's just the tip of the iceberg of guys who are on the MASH unit right now. And the way Terry Collins was just able to plug in guys from left to right coming out of the farm system just boggles the mind. It also goes to show you how underrated this guy is as a manager, and also how so beloved and respected he is by the players. And what about Jay Bruce? This guy couldn't have a clue at the plate. He had, 28 home runs or 29 home runs by the time he was traded to the Mets at the deadline. And how many did he have for the rest of the season?
10 more home runs.
10 more home runs.
Actually, even more. He had 12 more home runs. And on top of that, if you look at how he began with the Mets, he was 4 for 12 when he came from the Cincinnati Reds after the trade and all that. And then you look this past week in Tuesday's game, him and Cespedes both hit a home run in Miami, and that was the day after the emotional game after the passing of Jose Fernandez, in which that was. Even though the Mets didn't win that game, I was kind of happy for the Marlins to win that game, especially D. Gordon. His first homer of the year, and it was the game-winning homer. It was one of the most emotional moments I've ever seen in a ball game. And the way he raised his fist to the sky and all that, to remember his dearly departed friend and a friend to the entire Miami community, a young pitcher that we may never, who knows if we'll ever see another Jose Fernandez in our lifetime. This guy could have been, I think he would have been a Hall of Famer. I know that's saying a lot. I think he would have been a Hall of Fame pitcher.
Yeah, and especially considering that he came off a major surgery and was having one of his best seasons when he was killed in that accident. And by the way, they just recently had his funeral, and they wound up driving the hearse through the streets of Miami, and all of the Marlins players and the fans were trying to reach out to that hearse and chanting his first name over and over again.
Because that's how beloved he was. That's how much respect he garnered, and not just on this team, but throughout the entire baseball community. So it was a good emotional win on Monday, but Tuesday, the Mets come up with a huge 12-1 victory. Syndergaard strikes out 8 in 6 innings, giving up only 1 run, and both Cespedes and Bruce each had a homer in that game. Then you look at Wednesday's game. They win the game 5-2. Jay Bruce hits yet another home run, as well as James Loney. So they won 5-2 in that game.
That's called peaking at the right time. Jay Bruce peaked at the right time, which just so happened to be the last week of the regular season.
And then they were off Thursday. Then it's set up for that weekend series against the Philadelphia Phillies, the team that remember in the early days in the 2000s where they had this heated rivalry from 06 to 09. Well, in this particular weekend, Friday comes up. The magic number is at 2. They need to clinch the wild card spot. What do? They rip off a 5-1 victory. Jay Bruce, third straight game, hits another home run and gets 3 runs in the process. He drives in. Gesellman, 6 innings, 7 strikeouts. They win 5-1. They trim their deficit to 1 as the magic number. Now comes Saturday, the big day. This is where the Mets really have to pull away. Otherwise, they would have had to put Syndergaard on Sunday, and who knows. It probably would have been Cologne had that been the case in the wild card round. But nonetheless, here we go. It's Saturday. It's time for them to clinch. And what do? They clinch it. They win 5-3 on a 2-run homer by James Loney. And Jerry Familia closing out for his major league leading 51st save, 5-3. They finally win it. They lost Saturday 5-2.
Speaking of guys who've been making contributions from all over, James Loney was in the San Diego Padres minor league system when the Mets made a minor trade to get him. The numbers have not shown it at all, but James Loney has made some really important plays for them, both at first base and at the plate this season.
And but now comes the Giants team.
Yes.
And this is a rotation, really. It's Bumgarner. Then you have to deal with the likes of Johnny Cueto. Granted, he didn't have such a great beginning to the second half of the season, but when it comes to the postseason, this guy I think will bring his A game.
Yeah, and when you think about it, the Mets and the Giants kind of sort of are mirror images of each other. You mentioned before how the Giants had just slumped badly near the end of the season. That was before they wound up battering the Dodgers over the weekend. When you think about it, whereas the Mets have Yoenis Cespedes as their big bopper, the Giants have Buster Posey, a big bopper of their own, and whereas the Mets have a stud pitcher, Noah Syndergaard, who's going to start Wednesday night, the Giants have probably the most proven playoff pitcher in the modern era right now, Madison Bumgarner, who not only won a World Series a couple of years ago,
2014.
But also won a World Series coming out of the bullpen and throwing nothing but zeros.
For 5 innings he went, and it wasn't his turn in the rotation to start. He came in 5 innings, and this was days after his start to close out for the Giants.
Quite frankly, the Mets really have their hands full, and when you consider the numbers, Madison Bumgarner has been a bit of a Met killer in the past. So where you expect a pitcher's duel between a 14-game winner like Syndergaard and a 13-game winner like Bumgarner, don't be surprised if you see a couple of these guys get some big hits. Not only that, but Madison Bumgarner, his numbers don't show it, but he's quite the hitter for a pitcher. And Noah Syndergaard has hit a couple of home runs this season. Don't be surprised if you see some runs scored in this game.
I think this is going to come down to the bench, honestly. That's my feeling about this game. It's going to come down to the starting pitching and the bench for both teams. I think that will be the determining factor for whoever wins this game and goes on, unfortunately, to play the Chicago Cubs. Last year, the Mets played them in the NLCS and swept them out.
That's because Daniel Murphy just was like a hitting machine in that series. But I'll tell you right now, the Cubs won 102 games this season. You would not believe the pressure that is on this team to win a World Series. And that is saying a lot considering it's the Chicago Cubs. But look at this. If the Giants win this wild card game on Wednesday night, then the Giants have to be the team to play the Cubs. I would not want to be the Chicago Cubs if I'm playing the San Francisco Giants, a proven World Series winner 3 of the previous 5 seasons.
In even years.
In even numbered years. 2010, 2012, 2014. It's 2016. Does this mean that the Giants are due for their 4th title in the last 7 years? We're going to have to wait and see until they start throwing the first pitch on Wednesday night. But I'm telling you right now, the Giants are dangerous.
So you're saying the Giants will beat the Mets. That's who you're picking to win this Wednesday.
It's so hard for me to go against the Mets
especially since
like
you're wearing,
I have. Especially since I'm wearing the jersey, the old black jersey, the hat on backwards, and the fact that the season that they had just defied all expectations. But Madison Bumgarner versus Noah Syndergaard, I would take my pick with either team, to be honest with you. But Bumgarner's proven. He's already won a couple of championships, and he just does not let down in games like this.
I think also another factor to consider, it's going to come down to who makes the least amount of fielding errors.
Yeah.
I think fielding errors, starting pitching, and of course I mentioned the bench. You got Polanco for the San Francisco Giants, who I think could be the person that nobody will think about that could come off the bench and make a big play in terms of batting. And for the Mets, who do you think is going to be their big bench player to look out for?
When you think about it, it could be anybody. It could be maybe TJ Rivera. It could be maybe Kelly Johnson. That's another guy who the Mets basically plucked out of obscurity. It seems like every time he's put on a Mets uniform, he's coming up with a big hit. A home run here, a double there. Yep. And he's always, the numbers don't show it, and he's had the most unspectacular career of his entire of any baseball player. He's a lifetime 240 to 250 hitter. But every time he puts on a Mets uniform, he seems to come up with a big hit. So at this rate, Kelly Johnson is the X factor for them.
And the fact that he keeps going back to the Braves and then we have to make a trade for him. That's just, it's like Groundhog Day the last 2 years with this guy.
So I'll tell you what, though. if you put him in a playoff series, he's going to produce.
Yep. Well, the Mets, it's going to be a fun series, especially for us New Yorkers because we don't have the Yankees for yet another year.
Keep in mind, this is a one-game winner-take-all to decide who plays the Cubs in the division series.
It's in New York, though.
And it's in Citi Field, where the fans are going to make their voices heard really, really loud. But at the same time, San Francisco Giants fans have traveled very well recently. I mean, they had at least 2,000 or 3,000 fans when they were in town for both the Mets and Yankees series.
No offense to those fans. I respect them, but they're nothing compared to the 7-line army. Those guys know how to travel as well. Mm-hmm. They really travel just as well as their Giant fans, and they're going to talk about having your voices heard. They're going to have their voices heard behind center field this coming Wednesday night for sure.
And the fans need to keep making their voices heard as loud and as clear as possible. Now, speaking of the playoffs, the other wild card game was determined just yesterday.
It's going to be two AL East teams, the Baltimore Orioles, Buck Showalter's squad, going up against the Toronto Blue Jays at Rogers Center. You know that stadium actually has a hotel attached to it?
Its own hotel and its own Hard Rock Cafe, too.
You can actually get a hotel room and watch the game from your room.
That's exactly right.
Isn't that fun and all that while you're getting some over? But nonetheless, you got these two hard-hitting teams that are going to play bare-knuckle baseball going up against each other Tuesday. Who's going to be the starting pitchers for both teams?
Well, just to give you an idea exactly what's going to be going on in this game, another winner-take-all, I believe it's going to be Marcus Stroman who's supposed to be starting for the Blue Jays in this game. And for the Orioles, let's see exactly who it's going to be. It's going to
not
be...
Kevin Gausman.
Wait, I still have to try and... It's actually going to be Chris Tillman.
Chris Tillman, good.
And they say that the Orioles don't have any pitching. Chris Tillman has proven to be a good pitcher this season. He's a 16-game winner. So for people to say that they don't have any pitching, that's kind of sort of not true. Now, as far as the contrast in styles, whereas the Orioles have Chris Davis, a 47 home run hitter, the Blue Jays, of course, have Jose Bautista, Mr. Bat Flip.
But you're not even mentioning Mark Trumbo, too, who's been talk about an X factor in the batting order.
And
for
that's
the
who
Orioles.
the guy. And that's who their home run guy was this season. It was Mark Trumbo that was the home run guy.
And this guy's been bounced around from the Los Angeles Angels to the Arizona Diamondbacks and then traded to the Baltimore Orioles back in the American League. And he's honestly a better player in the American League than he is in the National League. And it's showing this year. With him, Wieters, and even Chris Davis all together in that batting order going against the likes of Josh Donaldson and Jose Bautista and Edwin Encarnacion and all those guys. This is going to be a hell of a this is going to be a batter's showdown. It's going to come down to which team can produce the most runs. No offense to the starting pitchers, but this is going to be a batter's matchup.
Yep. And the winner of this game, they just so happen they're going to have to play the number one seed in the American League playoffs, the Texas Rangers.
Oh, heaven forbid. And one of them they're going to have somebody start against, of course, the former Philadelphia Phillies starter, Cole Hamels.
He was a guy who's very, very, very proven in the playoffs.
And then Yu Darvish, of course, in that order, too. Mm-hmm. And Derek Holland possibly in that rotation as well. Well,
I'm a little concerned about the Rangers, though, because Yu Darvish made a couple of postseason starts, and he's been rather up and down. So what would happen if Yu Darvish were to start a playoff game? Would we see the Yu Darvish that was lights out during the regular season, or is he going to revert to the Yu Darvish that was unspectacular in the playoffs?
I think Yu Darvish will come to perform. I don't think he will be like Clayton Kershaw, who unfortunately has a history of choking in the postseason. You know, that's the thing about the Dodgers. You know, going to the Dodgers and all that. I'm sorry, I know I keep referring back to other teams, but the fact is, you know, Clayton Kershaw has to really come out and have a great performance this postseason. He cannot revert to what he's done in the past. And by the way, the Dodgers are playing the Washington Nationals.
And that is such an interesting matchup right there. You have the Dodgers, who've basically based their entire franchise history on pitching, going up against the Nationals team that's got boppers from 1 to 9. Yet they have really solid pitching of their own. Unfortunately, Steven Strasburg is not going to be a part of this series because he's on the injured list.
So who's the guy that the Nationals will be looking towards?
Well, it could be a couple of guys. It could be anywhere from Gio Gonzalez to maybe even a couple of the other guys that they have on their staff. Let's see. They haven't really determined who's going to be the starting pitcher for Game 1 yet. We do know Clayton Kershaw is going to be going for the Dodgers.
And then, of course, you have Rich Hill. That's going to be their number 2 guy. Then you got Derek Anderson, who's probably going to be in that rotation, along with possibly Kenta Maeda as well. So that's going to be probably your 1 to 4 pitchers.
And it's looking more and more like Max Scherzer is going to be starting Game 1 for the Nationals. And this first game is going to be huge. Game 1 is going to be in Nationals Park. The Nationals already have home field for that series. And the Nationals, who've the last couple of times have not gotten out of the first round, have a lot of pressure on them going into this series. The Dodgers have pressure on them as well because they've been a very inconsistent playoff performer every time they've made the division series. Last year, of course, they fell to the Mets, and as it turns out, Don Mattingly was fired. This time, Dave Roberts is running the show. But what's going to happen?
He should be manager of the year or considered for man. They've had to deal with just as many injuries, as the Mets have done, and they won their division.
And there's the other guy that's managing the Nationals, a seasoned veteran of the sport, Dusty Baker, a guy who's tasted the World Series both as a player and as a manager.
2 legendary African-American baseball players managing against each other who are great in their time and now get to manage these 2 young, thriving young teams, in the division series. This is going to be fun to watch. If I had to pick between these 2 teams, it's going to go to 4 games. I'm going with the Nationals to take the Dodgers. I'm sorry to Dave Roberts and company, but I still think that Clayton Kershaw will choke in the postseason as we've been accustomed to, and therefore I'm going with the Nationals to win that series. And whoever in Wednesday's game, I hate to say it, Met fans, I would love to see us win, but Bumgarner has proved himself well in the playoffs. I'm going with the Giants to win this by a score of 2-1. It's going to come down to also a few runs scored. So to me, it's going to be Giants 2-1 going against the Cubs, and the Cubs are going to win that series in 5 games.
I could not even begin to tell you what's going to happen with Dodgers Nationals. When you think about it, whereas the Dodgers based themselves on pitching, the Nationals have based themselves on thunderbolts in their batting order. But do not underestimate the Nats, though. You have Scherzer. There's also Tanner Roark, who's a very underrated pitcher.
17 wins.
Yep. I also mentioned Gio Gonzalez, who might be starting, possibly could be starting Game 3 of this series. Not having Steven Strasburg is really going to hurt them. I mean, he hasn't been such a great playoff performer either, but not having Steven Strasburg is really, really going to hurt this team.
I think because of their bats, that's why they're going to win that series in 4 games. And that's why I think they're going to go on to face the Cubs in the NLCS. That's going to come down to 6 games. I'm going with the Cubs to get to the World Series, to get to the place where they have been denied for so many years. And then as for the American League Series, if I had to pick Tuesday's game, I'm going with the Toronto Blue Jays to pull it off at home and go up to play Texas. And honestly, I smell upset. I smell upset over the Rangers in 5 games. Toronto will be in the ALCS against the team, the opposing team. You got the Indians versus the Red Sox.
The Indians and the Red Sox, and
that's going to be classic.
Wouldn't it be something if David Ortiz were to end his career with a championship? That would be the perfect cap to what has been a future Hall of Fame career.
Well, you got him. You got so many great players on that squad. Brock Holt.
The Red Sox have basically built their squad around really good pitching with Rick Porcello and also a couple of the other guys that they have. And
Xander Bogaerts.
Yeah, and a really dangerous batting order with Ortiz, with Xander Bogaerts, and Mookie Betts, and Dustin Pedroia, Jackie Bradley Jr., at this rate, this really looks like a Red Sox victory, but do not count the Indians out. The Indians, they say that they have no pitching, but they would not have gotten this far without the staff that they have right now. And you consider the guys that the Indians have on their staff.
Their
Just
offense?
listen to the numbers that they have over here. Corey Kluber, 18 wins. Tomlin, 13 wins. Bauer, 12 wins. Carrasco and Salazar, 11 wins each. That's a lot of balance on that Indian staff. You could go with any one of these 5 guys to start a potential playoff game.
Kluber, a former Cy Young winner 2 years ago, who definitely is somebody who had a terrible 2015 season. Only 7 victories this last year. It was 7-8 victories. He had a terrible 2015. Great 2014, which he won the Cy Young, especially the second half in 2014. This time he's coming back with a vengeance with Carrasco, with Salazar, and all those guys. And then you have the likes of Mike Napoli and you have Carlos Santana in that batting order. The two of them have been great together. I'm going with the Red Sox to win in 5 games. It's going to go to extra innings, Game 5. So I'm going with the Red Sox to win and face the Blue Jays in all AL East, ALCS matchup. And, of course, I'm going with the Red Sox to win. And I'm going with the Cubs to win the NLCS. Both teams in 7 games against their opponents, and then the World Series, Red Sox, Cubs. This is the Theo Epstein series, because remember, Theo Epstein was responsible for 2007, 2004, 2013. All 3 World Series that the Red Sox won were under Theo Epstein's watch.
There's also the other former Red Sox employee, Terry Francona. Terry Francona is going to be managing in this series against his former team.
Actually, no, because Terry Francona is with the Cleveland Indians. I'm saying
that's what I meant. Terry Francona is going to be managing in that Indians-Red Sox series against his former team.
Oh, in the ALCS, yes.
And of course,
in the wild card
Rick Porcello, the Jersey kid, who had a rather unflattering playoff past with the Tigers. He's a 22-game winner, and he's going to be starting his first big playoff game in a Red Sox uniform. There's also the matter of David Price, a 17-game winner who pretty much got his head handed to him in a lot of his starts. Even in the starts that he was winning, he was really lit up like a Christmas tree. Although he does have playoff experience in the past with the Rays and the Blue Jays from last year. So I'm really interested in seeing how those two can stack up against an Indians batting order, which is very, very underrated.
If I had to pick those going to win the World Series between the Cubs and Red Sox, a World Series that is going to be television's ratings bonanza. Believe me, you got the Cubs, who have not won in over 108 years. You talk about the curse of the Billy Goat, the curse of the Black Cat, the Steve Bartman incident of 2003, all the things that this fan base have had to deal with for over 108 years since they last won the series could finally come to an end. Just like the Red Sox in 2004 when they finally ended the curse of the Bambino, which I think, honestly, I wouldn't even blame Babe Ruth for that. That was the owner's fault for the Red Sox. He financed a terribly written Broadway show that went belly up, and he had to sell Babe Ruth's contract to save face. Yeah.
Now,
but in the end, I'm going with the Cubs. 7 games. They're winning the whole thing. Chicago, go and get your World Series. You deserve it.
If the Cubs do win this World Series, I don't think the city of Chicago is ever going to be the same. I think they might tear the north side. I think they might tear the entire city to pieces.
I hope that's not I hate when fans do that type of crap, Yes, it's great that you won the World Series, but do you have to go into a riotous spell where you end up flipping cars over, destroying property, and getting belligerently
you're
drunk?
mistaking them with the Vancouver Canucks fans, man.
No, that was after 2010 when they lost, 2011 when they lost to the Boston Bruins in the Stanley Cup Series. Yeah, the riotous people of Vancouver, and that's what made them, because the fact that Canada hasn't won a Stanley Cup since '93 when the Canadians won. But I'm talking about, when you said they're going to tear the north side apart, I thought you meant that there's going to be a riotous...
Oh, wow. I think they might celebrate this whole thing into spring training, to be honest with you.
All right.
Now, whereas the Mets will live to see at least Wednesday night, The Yankees are going to be watching the playoffs for the third time in the last 4 years. The only bright side to this, Mark Teixeira was able to end his career kind of, sort of on a positive note. He wound up beating the Red Sox with a grand slam home run this past week. And he got a really nice ceremony at Yankee Stadium over the weekend. Do you know that the rock group Twisted Sister presented him with a guitar? Because every time he strode to the plate for an at-bat, the PA system would always play Twisted Sister's I Wanna Rock, because he's a Twisted Sister fan.
I actually saw Dee Snider one time in Brooklyn.
Dee Snider was here at the station many years ago.
Yeah. Without his makeup on. I was at this Italian restaurant in Sheepshead Bay with celebrating a family friend, a late, dearly departed family friend's birthday. Yeah, Saul. And we happened to see Dee Snider from the late Dee Snider from Twisted Sister, and without his makeup on.
Yep.
And I'm like, do I go over to him and ask him for his autograph, or the fact that he's with his family? Do I just leave the guy alone and all that, and just not even do that? Yep. I left him alone because it's just not nice. They want to. They're human beings like the rest of us. They want to be with their family, eating out, and I feel bad sometimes when fans want to try and bother him during those few moments that they have with their families.
Yeah.
But anyway, the fact that he's a Twisted Sister fan and they played that song. I do like I Wanna Rock, but we're not going to take
it as their signature song.
Is my favorite.
Yeah. And I don't think Yankee fans are going to want to take missing the playoffs for three out of the last 4 years. Next season is going to be really, really critical. But the question is, what's going to be their game plan? Are they going to look ahead to 2017 and beyond, or are they going to try and make a run at a title in 2017 only?
I think they already set the blueprint for 2017 when they brought up Gary Sanchez, who was hitting home runs like gangbusters ever since he came up August 3rd. From the minors, and then you had Aaron Judge, you had Tyler Austin, who came up 10 days afterwards, and that was after Rodriguez was released from the team. And they homered back-to-back in their first big league at-bats. They were within one game of the wild card spot going to September 10th, and it all went to hell with that 3-11 skid that they were on after that 4-game sweep at Fenway Park. Everything just went completely and utterly downhill for this Yankee squad since then, and now they are facing basically another season at home, watching the postseason or playing golf to pass the time.
Exactly what happened for them to get this close yet this far? Well, let me count the ways.
I get Sanchez.
Pitching. After Masahiro Tanaka, the starting staff was a complete and utter disappointment. Michael Pineda was dreadful. CC Sabathia was a total disappointment. He wasn't throwing as hard as he used to in his younger days.
But his ERA at the end of the season was as low as he's had in 4 years. You have to give him that at least. He lowered his ERA for the first time in 4 years. He had something that was respectable, not great, but somewhat respectable.
I just wish that he had shown that for the entire season instead of for the last month of the season. That was a total disappointment there. There was also the matter of the batting order. Mark Teixeira showed why he decided to call it a career a couple of months ago. The injuries were just way too much for him, and quite frankly, he decided to call it a career at the right time.
But look at Monday's game. Do you see that tying homer he had in that 7-5 victory against Toronto in the 9th inning? And then
the two great defensive plays at first base against the Orioles yesterday.
How about the Wednesday game against Boston? He had the game-winning grand slam homer in which they won 5-3. Things like that. You have to admit, those were great moments right there.
But the batting order left a lot of guys on base for the majority of the season. Not only that, but the two guys up the middle, Didi Gregorius and Starlin Castro, had good seasons. I mean, they really supplied they supplied a lot of the power, and they played tremendous defense up the middle. They were a really, really great 1-2 combo. But after that, everybody else was either pedestrian or a complete and utter embarrassment to look at the plate. But there are some bright sides, and that's the couple of kids that made their way up the roster, specifically Gary Sanchez, who might have grabbed the starting catcher's job by the throat with the way he played for the last 2 months. 20 home runs in 2 months.
Yeah.
And this from a kid who we didn't know exactly what his future was in the organization because he was having problems with passed balls and having problems trying to recognize the strike zone. I mean, granted, he's going to have some trouble with breaking pitches, but when he gets a hold of a pitch, look out because he's going to send it a long way. And I'm telling you right now, you better not run against him because you're only asking for trouble.
Oh, without a doubt. But you know what? At the end of the day, that's all well and good. Let's hope for the future for the Yankees. Now, as for the NFL,
there is a couple of other things in regards to the Yankees. Number one, 2 more guys with Yankee connections are up for induction or up for nomination to be inducted into the Hall of Fame, one of which happens to be Lou Piniella as a manager, and the other, the late George Steinbrenner.
well,
And as far as other stuff in baseball, we officially said goodbye to 3 guys with baseball connections.
Dick Enberg.
Dick Enberg officially said goodbye in his last broadcast as the voice of the Padres. Of course, everyone knows him as the voice of the NFL and college football and basketball on CBS and NBC. And Vin Scully, after 67 years, called his last Dodger game.
Congratulations, Vince. Believe me, it was a great career after 60 years, what you did for the Dodgers organization, the most recognizable voice. The fact that, he's suffered from health issues the last few years.
Yeah, and unfortunately, his health issues prevented him from making a lot of the road trips. He was only calling Dodger home games and certain road games to either San Francisco or San Diego or even to Phoenix for the Diamondbacks.
So basically only NL West games. Mm-hmm. Other than that, he really had a great life. He had a great career. He was one of the premier voices that so many people in the business wanted to model themselves after.
I first discovered Vin Scully as a broadcaster, speaking as a fan, when he was calling games for NBC. The famous Mookie Wilson ground ball, the famous Kirk Gibson home run. You notice after his calls, he would not speak for at least 2 or 3 minutes. He would let the sounds of the roar of the crowd tell the story, because he always said the greatest sound that one could hear was the roar of the crowd. And he loved hearing the fans yell and scream for him. The last game that he called at Dodger Stadium was one for the ages. He called Corey Seager's game-winning home run, which won the division for the Dodgers. And what happened? Every single Dodger, the umpiring crew, and every single fan pointed to him and gave him a big, big standing ovation. There's not going to be a broadcaster like him for a long, long time. And there have been some great broadcasters in baseball. There's been those two. There's been Red Barber. There's been Mel Allen. Ernie Harwell, who called games for the Tigers for many years.
Bob Uecker, still doing his thing for the Brewers after 45 years. Or my favorite film of all time, Major League.
Major League. But Vin Scully was one of a kind. And just like he said to us and to the fans for so many years, we say to him, good night and a pleasant good evening wherever you may be. One thing that people don't know about Vin Scully, his last football broadcast was the famous Dwight Clark game, Cowboys and 49ers, January 82. It was the catch that sent the Giants, the 49ers, I should say, to their very first Super Bowl.
That was the one, of course, that was one of the 2 they defeated. I believe it was Cincinnati.
That's right.
And of course, they had 2 Super Bowls in which they killed Cincinnati twice. Mm-hmm. That's one of the few, rivalries in Super Bowl history that you can think of.
Yep.
And of course, one of the 4 victories that Joe Montana had in his legendary career.
Joe Montana was undefeated in the Super Bowl. And also, Joe Montana never committed a turnover in any Super Bowl that he played in.
Matt, remember the John Candy game?
Yes.
The fact that he had the utter, not gall, but some people say the utter gall to call and say, "Hey guys, isn't that John Candy in the stand?"
That just goes to show you how cool he was when it was crisis time. Joe Montana had ice water in his veins because he knew not only was he playing with a really good team, he himself knew that he was that good and that he was going to win this game.
And he did. He always proved it. One of my favorite plays, the catch.
Mm-hmm.
They had with Jerry Rice and
then there was the catch part 2 with John Taylor in the second Bengals meeting.
It's amazing what he's done for his career. But you know what? Since we're on the subject of football, Week 4 was yesterday. We had the game in London, of course. And
yeah, that was the first game of the day, Jaguars and Colts in London. And the Jaguars, surprise, won a football game.
30-27. And what actually got them started was that costly interception by Andrew Luck that led to the TJ Yeldon go-ahead touchdown when they were up 7-3. And then they scored on 3 more drives. They were up 23-6. And then, of course, what I feel bad is for Luck, all the pressure has to be on his shoulders to get this team back into contention every week. And they were this close. They were down just 30-27. At the end of the day, they ended up losing by 3 points.
Well, this just goes to show you how paltry the defense is right now, because it does not look like they have made any adjustments whatsoever to try and fix that line.
Will Fuller became the first Texans player in history to return a punt for a touchdown and a reception. The Texans ended up winning 27-20. The fact that the Cleveland Browns yet again screw it up and lose 31-20 on 4 red zone touchdowns by the Redskins, 3 of which were passing touchdowns by Kirk Cousins, 2 of those passing to Jordan Reed, the tight end.
Well, at least the Redskins were able to take care of the soft part of their schedule, and because of that, they broke even.
And how about for the first time in over 3,000 days, the New England Patriots were scoreless at home for the first time ever at Gillette, and for the first time since 1993 when the Jets beat them 6-0. It was the Bills who won 16-0 on a Sean Shady McCoy touchdown and 3 Dan Carpenter field goals.
And it was the very first win that Rex Ryan recorded as a head coach in New England, and yesterday was the last game of Tom Brady's suspension. But when you think about it, the Patriots did exactly what they set out to do, and that was get ahead of the curve without Tom Brady, and they did that. Now that he's coming back for Week 5, look out.
He's a caged lion, and guess who the meat will be? The Cleveland Browns. Yummy, right?
Yeah, you thought that the Cleveland Browns had the dog pound? No, the Patriots have their own dog pound, and those big dogs are going to want to eat.
How about the Panthers, man? Unfortunately, Cam Newton got concussed yesterday, and unfortunately, who knows how long that's going to be with that helmet-to-helmet, but the best part of this game in Atlanta was the 503-yard performance, Matt Ryan, a record, and a record 300-yard receiving performance from Julio Jones on 12 receptions and a 75-yard score. They win 48-33. They've scored 35-plus points in the last 3 games. The Raiders go into Baltimore, and Derek Carr throws 4 touchdowns, 3 of which go to Michael Crabtree, the last one being with about 2:12 left. They beat the Ravens 28-27.
Will the real Oakland Raiders please stand up? They're 3-1 this season. Granted, the last couple of seasons have been mediocre, and granted, they've gone through one coaching change after another in the last almost 30 years, but could it be that things are finally turning the corner for these Raiders?
Oh, without a doubt. 9 touchdowns to 1 interception with over 100 QB rating for Derek Carr. And I know you've never been the biggest fan of his in the past, but you have to admit, he's really turning the page in the corner with this offense, and he's got this team going on a great path right now.
Let's see what he can do against a really tough schedule, though, because the real meat of the schedule, specifically their division rivals, the Chiefs, the Broncos, and the Chargers are coming up.
And they got the Falcons next week. Actually, no, the Broncos have the Falcons next week. But the fact that the defense finally got some pass rushing. Now, how about this? The Chicago Bears also became part of the I just won my first game club with with Jacksonville, and they won 17-14. Brian Hoyer got them their first win of the year. Now there's a quarterback controversy possibly brewing in Chi-Town. 302 yards, 2 touchdowns, and he did well with Kevin White. This guy is a miracle worker now. And you also have to blame the 2 costly turnovers at the end of the game from Detroit.
Yeah.
And the fact that they were without Ezekiel Ansah on their and DeAndre Levy on that defense. The Rams, 17-13. Tavon Austin's 47-yard punt return sets up the 4-yard touchdown pass from Case Keenum to Brian Quick. They're 3-1 LA for the first time in over a decade, and they own sole possession of the NFC West.
There you go. Who saw the Rams, the Los Angeles Rams, take over sole possession of the NFC West lead? I know their return to LA has a lot to do with it, but the Rams are no joke, man. They've got some real players. I still want to see them start Jared Goff at quarterback, but right now, Case Keenum is doing okay.
And the
Todd
defense,
Gurley's doing okay, but the defense is carrying that team right now.
especially Aaron Donald, he is, and because that in that game, he actually Carson Palmer actually had a concussion too, and Drew Stanton had to come in for him as well. It's another big quarterback injury that took place yesterday. And how about the fact that the Chargers had the inability to keep a fourth quarter lead for yet another week? We saw it in Indianapolis, and we saw it again this week. 34-21, they get a lead, of course, and what happens? Melvin Gordon fumbles the ball. Tapp recovers at the San Diego 13. Breeze gets a 5-yard pass to Michael Thomas on 4th and 2 to make it 34-28. Then Travis Benjamin, the highly acquired free agent for San Diego, fumbles the ball. Nate Subpar recovers at the San Diego 31. 7 plays later, John Kuhn scores his 3rd touchdown of the game. That's right, John Kuhn, the former Green Bay Packer, now fullback for the New Orleans Saints, on a 1-yard run with the PAT making it 35-34. And then, of course, Phillip Rivers gets the ball intercepted at the end of the game with 1:14. Saints win their first game, 35-34.
Do you know that this was the first game that Drew Brees played in San Diego since he was discarded after 2005? He's a classy guy. He's not going to admit as much, but you had to think this was sweet revenge against the team that dumped him all those years ago.
It was cathartic. It was a real cathartic performance for him to come back to the very place where his career could have possibly ended, and the fact that he overcame that. And after that season, Miami actually was considering signing him, but New Orleans gave him a chance, and what happened? 8 times he went to the Pro Bowl, 6 times he led the league in passing yards, and he won a Super Bowl for New Orleans. What does that say right there? But greatness. Man, Dak Prescott, he's keeping that Cowboys train rolling yesterday. The fact that they were down 14 points and he gets them back into the game, and this is without Dez Bryant, this is without L. Collins, without Tony Romo, without Tyron Smith for another week, and what happens? He gets them within at 14 all. You had Ezekiel Elliott helping him, Terrence Williams on the 4-yard passing touchdown, Bryce Butler to tie it up at the half, Elliott 96 yards rushing in the second half. That's just in the second half out of the 138 he had all game. And Prescott, 2 touchdowns. What a performance. What a game. They win 24-17.
There's been some debate as to who the better rookie quarterback is, Dak Prescott or Carson Palmer. Right now,
No, not Carson Wentz.
Carson Wentz, excuse me. Who the better rookie quarterback is, Dak Prescott or Carson Wentz? Right now, Dak Prescott has done really, really well for himself, leading the Cowboys the first quarter of this season.
I like both of them for different reasons. I like Dak Prescott's ability to not let the big moments get to him. He really doesn't let anything faze him whatsoever. Even when his team is down by 14 points, he has the poise and calm to get his team back in the game, and he has yet to throw a pick in 131 attempts. Carson Wentz, great vision, great athleticism. These guys really are the future of their squads at the moment right now. And then Denver took the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to task, winning 27-7. And this, unfortunately, Trevor Siemian, who's done a great job with this team, had a shoulder injury on his left shoulder, non-throwing. Had to get out of the game with about 2 minutes remaining in the first half, and it was all Paxton Lynch for the rest of the game. And yet, for the second straight week in Tampa Bay, what happens? The game gets delayed.
because of a thunderstorm, a really violent thunderstorm. Did you see the clouds or the dark skies that were hovering over Tampa? It looked like a hurricane was going to hit.
An hour and 26 minutes it took for this delay. And this game had 6:52 remaining, and only a few thousand fans remained for that butt kicking. Jameis Winston's team is in some trouble.
Yep. And conversely, Paxton Lynch, their first-round pick, finally saw some action. He didn't do anything spectacular. He's not supposed to. He did what he was supposed to, which is manage the game. And the Broncos defense took care of the rest against the Buccaneers team that's still trying to figure things out for this year and next year.
He did get a 5-yard touchdown pass to Emmanuel Sanders. So that's pretty good. And Pittsburgh, they had one of the worst losses week 3 in losing to Philadelphia 34-3. That was their worst loss in 27 years. What do? They come back and take it out on the Kansas City Chiefs on Sunday Night Football. 43-14, first 5 possessions, touchdown pass. All 5 touchdown passes from one Ben Roethlisberger on the night. Twice he hit Antonio Brown. Did you see Antonio Brown's cleats? He had a tribute to
Arnold Palmer, who grew up in nearby Latrobe, Pennsylvania.
Who was always a big-time Steeler fan.
Yeah.
And just passed away, of course, losing another one of the greats that we lost in this world. Pair of touchdowns, Marcus Wheaton, Darius Hayward-Bay, Jesse James, tight end, who's had 2 touchdowns in the last 3 weeks. Really great for the Steelers organization. And for the Chiefs, they had 2 touchdowns in the fourth quarter, but they were garbage time points, and they played like absolute garbage. Those 2 turnovers in the very beginning sealed their fate.
Speaking of turnovers, we have to go from the sublime to the subliminal.
I was there yesterday.
Yeah, well, when did you and your parents decide to leave the game?
My mom, we left after the third quarter. To beat the traffic. To beat the traffic. And not only that, there were some fans. There was a Seahawk fan jawing at a Jet fan. There's times where they were talking some smack or trash towards each other or saying, and I was like...
I've heard some really unflattering things about Seahawks fans, about how they're bandwagon fans and everything else. Seahawk fans happen to be very, very powerful and very, very good fans. They're not called the 12th man for nothing. They make their voices heard. And when I say they make their voices heard, they've already set the Guinness World Record for having the biggest decibel level twice.
In their own stadium, yes. I've heard those. I remember that one Sunday night game they had where Michelle Tafoya couldn't even hear herself when she was trying to do the broadcast before kickoff. That's how bad it is to work a game if you're a broadcaster on the sidelines when the fans get that crazy. But these fans were just saying like, oh, thank you. We love the stadium. We love it very much. Thank you, guys. We love MetLife Stadium, of course, referring to their Super Bowl 48 victory in which they killed the Broncos 43-8. That was one of the biggest butt kickings I've ever seen in my lifetime. And
now, yesterday, we saw the anatomy on how to lose a game. When you think about it, things were pretty hopeful for the Jets during halftime. They were only down 4 points, but then
that was due to the Brandon Marshall touchdown on the sideline. That was a great touchdown.
And Brandon Marshall held his own against Richard Sherman for a while. He actually burned him a couple of times in that first half, but then Ryan Fitzpatrick suddenly forgot how to take care of the football. That's number 1.
3 interceptions in the second half because he didn't throw a single one in the first half. They did everything right in the first half, and then the second half came, and that's where it all, again, went to hell.
That's number 1, though. Number 2, where was Matt Forte? He got about 15 carries in yesterday's game, yet he still did not make any impact. He's got to get the ball more.
It's not only that, they were afraid because of this defense. This is one of the toughest defensive lines in the game. They probably loaded 8 people in the box in this game. And the fact they give up the least amount, 250 yards a game, and it showed. They are not. And then the dumbest thing that Fitzpatrick did was throw towards Sherman's way. He's not called one of the toughest cover corners in the league for nothing. He showed it.
Don't throw his way. What part of the words you don't throw towards Richard Sherman's direction do these quarterbacks not understand? And now there's even more calling for Ryan Fitzpatrick's head, yet Brandon Marshall is the one guy to try and stick up for him. But there is no trying to stick up for 10 turnovers in 4 games, and including 9 turnovers in the last 2 games?
9 interceptions the last 2 weeks. 6 against Kansas City, a career high from 3 yesterday, including 2 that went to Richard Sherman's way. And on top of that, how about the touchdown pass to Paul Richardson that they tried to challenge, and of course it was upheld on review. And then the Christine Michael dump-off pass where he was able to go over the pylon. Mm-hmm. And then the game-ending interception by Earl Thomas when they had several opportunities to get back in this game, and Fitzpatrick just wasted every single one in the second half.
And you thought things were tough for the Jets now? Well, wait till you see the schedule that awaits the Jets the last 3 quarters of the season. Just to give you an idea.
They got Pittsburgh next week.
And
then Monday night they have to go to Arizona. And then the following they got to play Baltimore at home. And then I forgot who they play on the third.
Pittsburgh. Let's see here. Arizona. Then there is
Baltimore. It's a
the
1 o'clock.
Ravens in a 1 o'clock game. The only soft game in the schedule is Cleveland, and not even that's a guarantee. Then after that, there is Miami, the first of their division rivals. Then they host the Rams. Then there is, I think, let's see. I think they have a bye week.
The Rams is not a guarantee either. The way they played against Seattle, I think the Rams could actually win that game. This is a bad season we're looking at for the Jets.
Then the Patriots.
But you also have to account for the fact that who was missing yesterday?
The Colts. Yeah.
Who was missing yesterday for the Jets on offense?
It was Eric Decker.
Partially torn rotator cuff. And not only was he missing, Jalen Marshall wasn't there. Their good return specialist, shoulder injury.
I'll tell you what, though. There is a shining light in that receiving core. It's Quincy Enunwa. He's proven to be a very, very good third target for the Jets so far.
But they never utilized him in the second half, and they abandoned what was actually working well, was those dump-off passes to both Bilal Powell and Matt Forte. They should have kept doing that in the second half, and they abandoned that. It was things like that, the turnovers, all these mistakes that ended up costing the Jets big time, and I'm so pissed off. It's not even funny right now.
Well, you should be pissed off. They're playing terribly.
And they are going to the Lions' Den. They're playing against a guy who just had 5 touchdowns yesterday. I shudder to think what they're going to do against that secondary with Antonio Brown. It makes me want to vomit my guts off. But I'll tell you this, Pittsburgh is going to ruin their day.
Well,
they're going to win. I'm sorry. They're going to win that game.
Whereas the Jets are going to try to right themselves against the
Won't.
Steelers. The Giants play tonight in the Vikings' new stadium on prime time.
Another losing game right there.
Well, let's see what happens, though. First off, the Giants never play well in Minneapolis. That's number one. Number two, the Giants, with the defense that they've played so far this season, this is where they should game plan against Sam Bradford. Because in spite of the fact that the Vikings are undefeated, Sam Bradford is not a great quarterback at all.
And the Giants,
if you put a rush on him, you can get to him and render the passing and running games meaningless.
And the Giants O-line better do a good job protecting Eli Manning, because last week that Vikings defense had 8 sacks in Carolina against Cam Newton and 12 QB hits. So if the Giants offense wants to win this game, protecting Eli is the number one priority, and getting the ball to Shepard and Victor Cruz. Cruz has to be involved this week tonight.
Now, before we wrap up, we want to let you know that we're going to be taking Columbus Day off next week. So you can check us out 2 weeks from tonight for that 500th episode.
Can't wait, man.
And we certainly hope that you can join us. And thanks to our dear friend Rob, who's on the other side of the glass.
Robert.
For everyone here, I'm Jamie.
And I'm Eric.
Good night, everyone.
Peace, Staten Island.